So you just had the election in Venezuela. And the election in Venezuela was between Maduro and Gonzalez. Maduro had already won 2 terms, and now it's the 3rd term, so he's going to be president for 18 years. 18 years is a long time. But it's also a long time to always have to thwart the United States of America when you had the first guy, not Maduro, but Chavez. We tried to overthrow Chavez in 2002. And then the coup d'etats have been going on, but notably in 2020. So coup d'etat in 2002, coup d'etat in 2020. I mean, why would we not coup d'etat a democratically elected government? They voted for somebody, and it wasn't somebody that we liked. Jimmy Carter said that Venezuela had fairer elections than we do. And actually they do. They have these receipts out of every one of the voting booths. They got voting machines. They got the electronic voting machines. And I think we need to talk about this stuff because we know what Donald Trump is going to do. Donald Trump claimed that the 2020 election was for himself. They said that he won the election and that it was being stolen from him. And yet it was actually the exact opposite. He was telling a lie. He projected his own corruption to the other side, and they had to stop the steal rally. That's what January 6th was called, to stop the steal. But it wasn't to stop the steal. He was the one that was trying to steal the damn election. Well, let's take a look at the Electoral College vote. 306 versus 232. So that means, I mean, my God, that's what, 74 Electoral College votes? So 74 Electoral College votes. That's kind of a blowout, isn't it? 74. Now, the percentages were closer, 51% to 47%. But Joe Biden beat Donald Trump by 74 Electoral College votes. 74 Electoral College votes. 74, 74, 74. 306 is bigger than 232. 306 is bigger than 232. 306 is bigger than 232. And yet he was able to convince his supporters that they were stealing the election away from him. Now, he's a liar. We know he's a liar. We know he's going to lie again. He tells us what we want to hear. He's a liar. He's a liar. He's a liar. Now, had Donald stayed in office past the inauguration, that's a civil war. That's a civil war. That means we're going to be fighting each other because of Republican-Democrat shit, and he didn't peacefully walk away from power. He's talking about how when he gets into power, he's going to stay into power forever and ever. Are we going to ignore him? He was ready to leave, and then he says, go ahead and try to take the Capitol over. So let's talk about Venezuela. So hopefully this video is going to land on November 5th, and we'll talk about what's fair and what's not fair. Technically, I guess we could get all of Venezuela in one room and just do a voice vote, and then just try to hear which side is louder than the other. But people can yell louder, so that's not perfect. Electronic voting machines could be perfect, but you got hackers. You got hackers. And then you also have the election counters, right? It's not how many votes you get, but it's who counts the votes up. So you could have the voting machine, and then what's a recount with a voting machine? Just take a look at it again. Hey, could you go ahead and do that recount? Yeah, it says 32 to 32. Here, let me do another recount. Yep, 32 to 32. 306 to 232. 306 is bigger than 232. So what if it had been closer? I mean, what if it had been closer between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? If it would have been close and it wasn't obvious, if it wasn't between 74 Electoral College votes, there's been ties in American history. The Electoral College has tied. And then if it's only Florida, I guess there was 3 things that we talked about with Bush v. Gore. When it came to Florida, was first you had to define what a vote was. One person, one vote. Then you had to define how to recount the thing. And then you had to have some kind of judicial review just to make sure that the recount had been counted correctly. Well, did you turn your head and look at the thing? I did. I looked at the screen, and the hack screen said that it was. So it almost seems like there's not very many good voting methods. Maybe if we all did by just paper ballot, where we just fill in a little slip and we put it in a thing, and then we all count in front of each other. But then there was that one movie, The Election, and he was counting in front of everybody, and then he kind of balled up one of the votes and threw it off to the side. And then there's receipts, so you could get the Diebold machines and then have the receipts. So let's take a look at some of these, election incongruities, inconsistencies. The biggest one, it seems like that they are saying, is that you had this Maria Corina Machado. This Maria Corina Machado was barred from running herself, and she had won 90% of the vote primary. There's also Henrique Capriles. So Henrique Capriles and Maria Corina Machado both were barred from running. And so you might say, well, hell, that's not fair. That's not fair, and it's not fair. Unless, of course, you tried to overthrow the government, because we got a ban like that, too. The Confederates tried to overthrow the government, so you can't run for... No, you can't be a part of the American... No, you tried to overthrow our government. And then they tried to do that with Trump, too, which was correct. He did try to overthrow the government. Oh, it was just a riot? Well, then he started a fucking riot. That's arrestable as well. He's also got 34 felonies. I'm supposed to believe that you guys care about the police state stuff. You saw Sonia Massey get shot up. Get shot right the fuck up. She got murdered inside her own home. So July 28th, 2024 election. Maduro versus Gonzalez. Now when you look at the numbers, Maduro versus Gonzalez, Maduro is sitting there saying that it was 51% to 42%. Well, that's how elections generally turn out. 40-60 is a landslide, but 51% to 42%, that's Diverger's law. What specifically is Diverger's law? Here, let's read it. In political science, Diverger's law holds that in political systems with only one winner, like in America, two main parties tend to emerge, with minor parties typically splitting votes away from the most similar majority party. Meaning what? So because we have a presidential election where only one person wins and it's a winner-take-all, that no matter, even if we had 10 people that were running, it always comes down to two. It always comes down to one or the other, and then those two get stronger and stronger and closer, then the other candidates fade away. So Diverger's law says that it's going to be between two candidates, and the two candidates are going to be close. And now they are saying that it's 70% to 30%. They're saying that Gonzalez had won 10 million votes versus Maduro's 3 million votes. And it's almost like 3 more million votes than what had voted from before, because there was 8 million votes that they had. Well, I'm just going by the media report, so I can only go by my own common sense and what the media is saying. So Donald claimed the 2020 election for himself, even though it was crystal clear that he could have actually done something with the Electoral College. He could have disputed the Electoral College, but he didn't do the thing right. Instead, he just wanted to overthrow it and say, hey, don't certify the damn thing. If it was a tie, then it would go to the House contingent election. If it was a tie, if it was close. But he didn't push for it to go to the House contingent election because it wasn't a tie and it wasn't close. So instead, he lied to his supporters, and he said they were trying to steal the election. He gets millions of dollars into his coffers. And then there was even that one guy that was like, well, my president said that they were stealing the election. Unfortunately, in America, it's not that we care about, the policies of the people. You had that one Christoph. So Bill Christoph, he said that it was okay that a Barack Obama had got in there because ultimately he carried the Iraq occupation on. We brought the combat troops home, but we kept the occupation going. So that Christoph says it doesn't matter who's president as long as the policies that he wants continues to carry on. So Maria Corina Machado and Henrique Capriles were barred from running themselves. So there's legitimate reasons. I heard some kind of silly reasons that the assets declaration didn't include food vouchers. Now, wait a second. You said that you had a house and land and you didn't tell us about your food stamps. That reminds me of Breckenridge County Courthouse. Yeah, hey, can I have a lawyer? Yeah, sure. Tell us what you're worth. Here, I wrote some numbers down, and then she goes back, well, I added the figures up, and the figures don't add up, so what the fuck? people just fucking lie and make up shit. But we have Jill Stein right now in Nevada. The Democrats are suing to get Jill Stein off. She's supposed to get 10,000 signatures. She got 30,000 signatures. And it's the Democratic Party that's trying to push Jill Stein off the ballot. So when it comes to what's fair and what's not fair, the U.S. official government, the officials of the American government are sitting there saying, you know, that it's wrong and it's this way and it's that way. The U.S. officials want a coup d'etat. They don't want a socialist president, and they want all that damn oil. They want the oil companies to go in there and to be able to take all the oil away from the Venezuelan people. He's using all those oil profits in order to make it better for the Venezuelan people. So if you want to say that it's not right, I mean, sometimes you do have to kick off people, right? But I ran for, as a Democrat, I only had to get 2 signatures. Jill Stein's got 30,000 signatures. And if you've ever done signatures, well, you know how it is. And so by having a 50% validity rate, which is a piss poor validity rate, but if you have a 50% validity rate, that means you got 15,000. That's why they did so many. Instead of just 10,000, they got 30,000. Indiana Supreme Court blocks injunction, opening door for Russ to be kept off of May ballot. So here's election 2024. Indiana is keeping U.S. Senate hopeful John Russ from appearing on the Republican primary ballot in May. I'm not sure how that ended up. So Jill Stein is being kicked off the ballot in Nevada. The Oregon Republican Party attorney urged the Secretary of State to target the Libertarian ballot access. So Libertarians, I feel like in our heart of hearts, you got the center-left and the center-right parties, Democrat, Republican, and then you have the more far left and the far right, Libertarian and Green Party. So in our heart of hearts, in America, I think that we are Green and Libertarian and Democrat and Republican. We have 4 political parties in our hearts. So why would you try to kick off the Libertarians or the Greens? They might say, well, the Libertarians are going to take the Republican votes away and the Greens are going to take the Democrats' votes away. The only way that the Libertarians can take a Republican vote away is if the Republicans aren't actually Libertarian. They aren't actually being true to their base. They're pretending that they're center-right, but they're actually not. Everybody has a right to run, and everybody takes everybody's votes away from them. So if we're being consistent logically, but we're not, and we don't do consistent logic. Here's another article. Third-party presidential candidates blocked from North Carolina. Okay, what the fuck is this shit about? Kennedy, so Cornel West. So Cornel West and Robert Kennedy Jr., are they going to be able to vote in North Carolina? Will North Carolinians be able to vote for Robert Kennedy or Cornel West? There was also the Constitution Party. So you got Kennedy's We the People Party, the Constitution Party, and then Cornel West. Why are we not allowing people to run? You don't want to make it super duper easy, but my God, get 10 people to support. If you had like 1,000 people running, then okay, I can understand to kick people off the ballot. But you don't have 1,000 people who's trying to run. You don't have 1,000 people who's trying to run. So if you want to say, well, that Maria Corina Machado and that Henrique Capriles were barred from running themselves, well, it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court went ahead and decided it. And they gave her a 15-year ban. If you're CIA-backed, I mean, if Juan Guaido wanted to run again, well, you tried to overthrow the fucking government. You took money from a foreign government, the U.S., and then you tried to overthrow this legitimately elected government. No, you can't run for our damn system anymore. You've already been shown a goddamn cheating piece of shit, a treasonous, cheating, destabilizing piece of shit. You're anti-Venezuela. You don't give a fuck about no Venezuela. Democracy decided the Venezuelan people went out, they voted, and ultimately I want to know who won, you know. I did want to see Maduro won, and when I heard he lost, I was sad about it. And when I heard he won, I was happy about it. So I am a little bit biased on this. I will not. And so me being on Maduro's side, I just want to talk about all these issues, because when it gets to November 5th, 2024, when Donald Trump fucking loses, but he says that he fucking won, if the Electoral College was closer, let's say it was between one Electoral College, or let's say it was like a Bush v. Gore 2000 Florida thing, so it come down to 300 votes. So Bush v. Gore said 3 things: define what a vote is, to find out how you're going to recount, and then have some kind of judicial review. Those were the three main things with Bush v. Gore. And those three things make somewhat sense. But if it's just look at the computer screen, okay, well, look at the computer screen and then tell us what it is. Well, I guess you could take a picture of the computer. You could print it out. Well, I looked at the computer screen and then I printed it out and then they recounted it. So I looked at it again and then I printed out the exact same page. I don't know if that's a good recount. Now, if we had a receipt, that'd be cool. If we had, you wrote it down, paper ballots. Paper ballots are cool too. And then not only a receipt at the thing for the machine itself, but receipts for the individuals too. Because that would show that there was some bullshit going on. I remember in Letcher County, I tried to take a picture of my vote, and they got all fucking fucked up about it. They were acting stupid. But how do I know that my vote counted? I don't know if my vote counted. So by getting a receipt, and you don't have to, your vote is supposed to be secret, so you could just put a number on the thing. But I think it would be a good idea for people to get a receipt to them with their, own personal number on it that says this is how you voted. So now you have proof. Now that doesn't totally prove anything, but if it came back, I voted for Bernie Sanders. So if it came back in Letcher County at that precinct that nobody voted for Bernie Sanders, now we know there's corruption. Now we know that there's some bullshit that went down. I got the receipt that says I voted for Bernie, and yet at that polling station, nobody voted for Bernie. How the hell did that happen? So I think by having a Diebold machine, I don't know if I like these Diebold machines because computers can be hacked. They can be hacked. They can be hacked. And even Maduro said that his CNE, the Central National Election, the CNE, whatever, was hacked. But then they're also saying that CNE is on the side of Maduro. So he's saying that somebody had tried to hack into the CNE. And then later on they said that CNE is in Maduro's pocket, and then Maduro had still won. So what the hell is going on here? To think that hacking doesn't, happen, it does, and it can happen. It's a damn computer. It's a damn, it's an operating machine. It's got hard and software and hardware. So it's the exact, of course it could be hacked. Anything could be hacked. Are you kidding me? So I would love to think, ultimately, I want a fair election. The person that got more votes is the person that gets to be the president. The person that got more votes is the one that gets to be president. So I think that there are some legitimate reasons to kick a person off the ballot. I think Jill Stein should be allowed to run in Nevada. Maine's Democratic Secretary, right, they had removed Donald because he tried to do the insurrection. But so did Hitler, right? And so did Cuba, and so did Bolivia, Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro, and Hitler. Hitler tried to overthrow the government violently and then got thrown in jail, used the court as a grandstanding opportunity, and then was able to be swept into office. So we know Donald is going to lie. He could lose by one vote, and then he says, they stole the election. Or he could lose by 1 million votes, and he'll still say they stole the election. So we have to have not only our processes in place, but also the recount in place too. And our elections need to be fair. I remember I voted in Grant County and there was some bullshit that went down. My own father had laughed about my vote getting thrown out. So Letcher County was Bernie Sanders, and then Conejos County. I lived in Conejos County. I told the Conejos County people, but I had to do some planning and zoning shit, and if I wasn't up and up with planning and zoning, who cares what the Constitution says? The Constitution of Colorado had said that the military can't stop you from voting. Well, apparently, no, just the one election chief could stop you. A local county elections chief could stop you from voting. The reason why I mention my own personal experiences is because nobody gave a fuck. And that makes me scared for my country, because ultimately, when it says who won the election, who didn't win the election, it's just University of Kentucky versus U of L. It's just the Wildcats versus the Cardinals. People just want their own damn team to win. It doesn't fucking matter if it's fair or not. But you don't know who the superior team is if it's not a fair damn game, if it's not a fair election. You don't know who actually won. The person with the more votes is the one that wins. Also, the AP is reporting a lot of this stuff. And the AP, well, shit, they sucked Mac Bevin's dick. So big surprise, Bevin actually ended up winning. But I was running against Jack Conway, and I was sitting right there. Did you want to interview us? Did you want to talk to us? No, we're We're a bunch of corporate right-wing piles of shit. So when the AP says that Maduro didn't win, I don't believe you, AP. I think you're a piece of shit motherfucker who just fucking lies and you want the U.S. government to declare whatever. Why would the U.S. government declare? Because the U.S. government wanted Gonzalez to win. Well, they have these receipts, so clearly I wasn't. So it's a contested election, and that's when civil wars happen. A lot of times in America, because it wasn't contested, clearly one person won, the other one didn't win. Since we don't actually have to count the millions of votes, all we got to do is count the Electoral College. That's how we still have it. So we don't have to count the millions of votes again. We just have to count the Electoral College, and the Electoral College comes down to just the people, the agents, you know, the 500 people of the party of the state that had won. So that could be, you know, so for instance, Kentucky, let's say Kentucky goes to Donald Trump. So therefore, all of Kentucky's 7, 8, 9 Electoral College votes is going to go for Donald. Typically, that's how it works. But it's also, those electors can vote for whomever they please. But if the Republicans win, Donald wins, then the electors are chosen by the Republican Party. If one of them happens to be, what they call that, a faithless defector or whatever, a faithless elector, that means the Republican Party had chose them, and then when they went to go vote, they said, no, I want to vote my conscience. So it's very unlikely that that happens. Some of the states allow for faithless electors. This is not a good system. The idea of picking the Electoral College votes was that it was from the people. And since you're picking it from the people, it's not like you're picking another Congress. You're picking the electors for the elected. And so it's supposed to be fair. And if it's tie, if the two people there's no majority victor and it's a tie, then it gets thrown to the House contingent election, and then it goes to the top 3 vote getters, the top 3 Electoral College vote getters. So we know he's going to lie. If he wins, of course, he'll be like, yeah, I won. And then there's the Mississippi plan. And what was the Mississippi plan? Well, it was violence and voter suppression. So white Southern Democrats, this is how Reconstruction is going to, they moved the troops out from the South. And so they got tired of black folks voting and then all these righteous white people to getting elected and other black folks. They didn't want black folks and righteous whites to get elected. So when Reconstruction ended, 1877, the occupation is going to go away. So now these KKK, white supremacist pieces of shit are going to say, no, you didn't register to vote properly. Well, they would ask stupid-ass questions. What is Clause 5 or this or that of the Constitution? And do you know how to read? And did you pay your taxes? And all this other shit. So they would make sure that people that could vote wasn't allowed to vote. And like I said, Conejos County, Grant County, Letcher County, there's been inconsistencies. And even those elections, people had said, hey, anybody know anybody that there is some irregularities? Yeah, hey, right here. Nothing. I'm not going to pretend that my country gives a shit about democracy. I'm not going to pretend that anybody gives a shit about democracy. It's Louisville, it's Wildcats versus Cardinals. And that makes me sad, too, because if it's a contested election, then that means everybody's just going to get into their camps and just say, well, my guy won. Well, your guy won? No, my guy did. One of your motherfuckers won and the other one did not. So yeah, you wanted yours to win, but he didn't. There's the receipts. You see the receipts. You see the videotape evidence. You see that JFK's head went back into the left. There is an objective truth here. So threats of violence and voter suppression against white Republican supporters and African American citizens, ultimately it won. So voter suppression and threats of violence and actual violence keeps people from the polls. So disenfranchised people use violence. That's the Mississippi plan. And the fact that I know that that shit works makes me very, very nervous for my country. Very, very nervous. So let's keep talking about Venezuela. Let's keep talking about Venezuela because it's a separate country. So by talking about them, we can look at ourselves better. So, you know, I'm saying I could be wrong about Maduro. It is contested, but we don't have really a good mechanism in place to be able to figure this out. Their side saying they won, he's saying he won. Well, who do we listen to? Do we get the United Nations? Do we trust the United Nations? Well, we got the Security Council veto, and they say that Israel can go ahead and murder Palestinians. So who won between Palestine and Israel? Who cares? We could just murder, right? So European Union, they stole Venezuela's gold, and they're sitting there saying, just make sure you keep the freedom to assemble and the freedom to express yourself right. Like, motherfuckers. They're sitting there trying to tell Maduro to be more upright and basically trying to get a foothold into the country so they could topple the damn fucking regime. If he's a legitimately elected president, I don't like anybody that's over 10 years or 8 years. George Washington was president for 8 years. I like that. You get 1 decade. You don't get 2 decades. So I'm not happy that he's going to be in there for 3 terms, 18 years. But if he's a legitimately elected president, there should be term limits. I'd like to see him step down after 18. I wish he would have picked a successor and had a successor run instead. He's had, 12 years to do so. That would be brilliant. That would be smarter instead of just always being Maduro, Maduro, Maduro. But the opposition is saying 10 million versus 3 million. That's 70% to 30%. Sometimes it could be a blowout. But Diverger's Law says that it's not a blowout. You have multiple candidates. 2 candidates are going to bubble to the top, and then it's going to be very close between those 2. That's Saddam Hussein numbers. That's Putin numbers. That's like Cameroon. Cameroon's got a dictator. Oh, hey, I got 99% of the vote. Oh, wow, congratulations, Putin. How'd you get 99% of the vote? That's clearly a fair. Putin likes to kill his opposition. And then there's people that support that motherfucking dictator. Not even Americans at all. Don't care about the 3 branches of government. Don't care about stopping tyranny or totalitarian dictatorships. 90% vote primary, 15-year ban. Let's see here. AP. Okay, so they have images of these tally sheets. So in Venezuela, you get a receipt for the polling station. So the Diebold machine at the end of the night has a sheet, and then every observer gets to see that receipt. I don't know if every voter gets a receipt. Every voter should get a receipt. But that's at least a little bit better, because by having receipts at the end of the night and giving it to everybody that's there, you don't have to look at the computer screen. You just printed up the computer screen and you pass it around to everybody. So here's what I'm looking at. I just printed it up. Now you get to see what I just looked at. Now, they were saying that they got, 24,000 images of those tally sheets, which represents 8 million votes, but they also said that it only represented 79. And then out of the 8 million votes that they had said, this is the opposition and this is the U.S. State Department. So out of the 8 million votes that they say that they got evidence for, 4% of them are too blurry. And then they're saying 79%. That means there's 21% of the votes haven't been counted. So 2 million votes, could 2 million votes sway it one way or the other? I guess 10 million versus 3 million, 2 million doesn't really sway because that's a 7 million vote margin. But you're trying to tell me that they won by 7 million votes? That Diverger's Law calls bullshit. That doesn't make sense. That's too much of a blowout. That's, like I said, Saddam Hussein, Putin numbers. That's Cameroon numbers. You got 99% of the vote? No, I got 70%. Okay, that's bullshit. 40-60 is a blowout. 30-70 is like, wow, holy fucking shit. Everybody must love this Gonzalez. I've never heard of this Gonzalez. It's not my country, but he's part of the Unitary Party, and he's backed by the U.S. And then what happened to not meddling in people's elections? What about collusion with Russia? You can't collude with Russia and meddle in our elections. And here we are meddling and colluding with Gonzalez, and Gonzalez is basically a Machado, back person. So Machado wasn't allowed to run. Machado said she was behind Gonzalez. He's part of the Unitary Party. Unitary Party, is that like a unitary government? Because the Russian Revolution was against the autocracy. Unitary, that's dictatorship. That's totalitarian dictatorship shit. Let's keep on going. European Union, I can't trust you motherfuckers because you guys were wanting to coup d'etat him 2020 coup, right? Okay, they were trying to push for brand new elections. That's not how Venezuela works. So they just said, no, we're not going to have new elections. We're not going to do this shit your way. Martin Luther King marches. 33% turnout, 30 million votes total. Yeah, 30 million people is in Venezuela, so the turnout rate is 33%. In some respects, it's not, democratically legitimate because most of the people in Venezuela didn't vote, but most of the people in America don't vote either. Antigua, Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I've also heard, and then the international community, as they say, Maduro lost too. Which international? The West? Canada, America, European Union, UK, Italy. I can't trust these goddamn nations. Now, Bolivia, Honduras, Cuba, Nicaragua, they all agree with Maduro. They said Maduro won. St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Well, I trust St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda. Now, Mexico said that they wanted to see the receipts. They want to see the government actually say, why don't you show us the receipts? And then the receipts is election receipts. There's a QR code scan. So it would be to Maduro's benefit to publish the numbers that he has. 51% to 42% is closer to Diverger's law. So if you're actually going to cheat the election, it would make sense to have it within the, between 40% and 60%. To have it 30% and 70%, you're cheating too fucking much. You got to make it at least sound probable. Oh, you got 99% of the vote, Putin? You fucking liar. You fucking liar. You cheated, Putin. You're not a fucking god. You don't believe in elections. You killed off your opponents. And then when the election actually happened, you ran against a bunch of douchebags. And not only that, but you cheated. And maybe, hell, the people that go to the polls, maybe it does say 99% because they're just using the Mississippi plan. They're using violence. And why would you go to a Russian election knowing that Putin is a fucking cheating bastard? You know that your vote won't fucking count. It won't fucking matter. And hell, you might get killed and beat up for it. I remember actually voting at Xavier University, ran for president of one of the halls, Banger Hall president, and the lady that I ran against, she was sitting there standing by the booth and just looking at how people voted. Watched how people, hey, why'd you vote that way? Why didn't you vote for Putin? Get the hell out of here. It's supposed to be a secret vote. You go behind the little curtain, you punch whatever you want in, and then you walk away. But these election machines can be hacked, so there could be somebody just looking right, at a different machine, seeing exactly how you voted, when you voted, and then just, get your name and number, and then disappear you. Maduro, let's see, arbitrary detentions. Maduro is saying that there's at least 100 violent terrorist attacks. So there's a way, a lot of the Muslim nations with the extremist Muslims would actually, Afghanistan and Iraq in some respects, the Al-Qaeda, they would blow up the election polls and the election places. A lot of people are there. They're all about democracy. Blow up the election place. Well, shit, I went to go vote and I fucking died. Violence, unfortunately, because of the Mississippi plan. We know that voter suppression and threats of violence and outright violence. And they were sitting there saying, Maduro saying he's up against violent fascists, which I believe. I believe they're up against a bunch of violent, racist, fascist piles of shit. So it's incredible that Maduro has stayed strong, to be honest with you. He not only has to go up against those who do legitimately oppose him, but the opposition's being financed by big money, the U.S. government, the CIA. And since we are clearly on one side over the other, why would anybody care what we ruled from all the way over here? Well, according to our numbers and our calculations over here, Maduro had lost. Yeah, you thought he lost in 2020 and there was no election going on. Right in the middle of the midstream, you were like, hey, you lost the election. We didn't even have an election, so hit him where it hurts. Assets declaration. So, not saying that you got food stamps. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but having the CIA finance you to overthrow our fucking government, that's a reason to block somebody. That's a reason why Donald shouldn't have been on this, on the ballot in all these places. Jill Stein is getting kicked off, and this has been the same story with libertarians and Greens my entire life, since Ralph Nader. They want to say Ralph Nader stole the election. No, the Supreme Court stole the election. Did you forget how? And then also, Al Gore had a whole bunch of issues he could have actually ran on. But he ran as a right-winger. He also had Joe Lieberman. So you're telling me that Al Gore wouldn't have done the Iraq War? I don't think you could be for sure of that. And to run as a Democrat, all you needed was 2 signatures. So they're saying it's judicial criminality. Then they're saying they never actually served me the official papers and all this other shit. So everybody just playing these stupid ass games and who can you trust? You wish you had some election commission and then you had some Walter Cronkite, just a person everybody knew and everybody loved and everybody trusted. Carter. I would trust Carter. If Jimmy Carter went down there and counted up the damn votes himself, it would be nice to have fair elections. So, if America wanted to go down there and send troops and protect the polling stations, but then that we would stay. and occupy the thing. So we would have to have Russia, right? Russia troops and American troops. And since it was a Security Council, the United Nations are what rules the world. Maybe have China and France and the UK. I don't know. I think China, either China or Russia and America, just have two big superpowers, and then just have one soldier per station. And if there is violence or insanity, because that's how we do it here, is we have one Democrat and one Republican. But what about the Libertarian? What about the Green Party? And what about the Independent? You need precinct captains. You need election captains. You need people that actually stand over the local officials who are counting all these votes. The gangs of New York says it's not about getting the most votes. It's about making sure the people who count tell the rest of the people that you got more votes. Which, what the fuck? No, it's about who's got more votes. And if the people who are counting are cheaters, well, then we need to fucking kick them in the asshole. Just kick them straight in the asshole. Put a boot in their ass hole. So I have to question my own government, because I know a lot of people in America don't really give a shit about democracy. A lot of people say, we're a republic, not a democracy. But we have elections, and without elections, it's not a republic. So that means we have to have the consent of the people. We have to have the people that actually give their power away to the representatives. And what is a republic? A republic is a representative democracy. So motherfuckers are just stupid as shit around here. They're dumb as motherfucking shit. Well, it's not a democracy. You don't want mob rule, but goddamn, when does the mob ever rule anything? We barely even control the mob barely even controls our fucking elections, which is, the mob does control the elections. 100%. Whoever has the majority, that's the mob. That's who gets to be the president. So we need to consider several things. We need to consider the divergers law. We need to make sure that the numbers look, off the top, the numbers look like they're honest. We need honest people to report the things, and we need an honest way to actually vote. I think having that receipt process, not just have a receipt for the end of the night for the Diebold machine saying what the total vote was, but every person who votes gets a receipt. And if all that sounds too much to you, then I think paper ballots are perfect, because paper ballot, that is your receipt. You turn in a paper ballot. In Colorado, it's perfect. You would have a paper ballot for a month, so you could actually fill it out and make a copy of it and then turn it in. So you already have your own receipt. By having a paper ballot, you made your own copy, you turned it in, and then they got the receipts because they have all the paper ballots sitting right there. People could go through it, see if there's any irregularities, see if there's people that's voting that shouldn't be voting. That one guy said that apparently he either did or did not kill his wife. His wife goes missing, but somehow her written ballot got turned in. So he turned her written ballot in even though she was dead. Is that why she died? Because he's a big Trump supporter? He got tired of her canceling his vote out, so now Trump got 2 votes in Colorado? So I can't trust American media. I can't trust a lot of Americans. I can't trust the European Union. I can't trust the U.S. officials. It's hard to tell who actually won the election, who didn't win the election, and honestly, there's an objective truth. So somebody got more votes than the other. You're telling me Gonzalez got 10 million votes versus 3 million votes? That sounds absurd and over the top. That sounds so fucking ridiculous to me. It's possible somebody could be that well beloved and then the other person could be that well hated. It is possible. I'm not going to deny the slight possibility of it, but Diverger's Law says that's bullshit. So look at the numbers and then look at the actual machinations of the elections. I don't want my country to turn into a civil war, because Donald said he was cheated even though he had lost, but he said he was cheated, and instead of the Electoral College being between 74 Electoral College votes, what if it was, a tie? Or what if it was between just 3 or 4 people? Or what if it was like a Florida situation? So, you don't know how one of the states actually goes because it was between, 10, 20, 100, 1,000 votes. If it comes down to 1,000 votes in these states, millions of people vote in the states. And so if it comes down to 1,000 votes, then you'll have to count millions of votes. You'll have to recount all the states' votes. With the Electoral College, that should make things easier. It should make things easier because you could see the Electoral College, agents, the people themselves, when they go to ratify the vote themselves, they have to go in and then they have to vote themselves. So the Electoral College actually has to show up And then if it is a tie, if it's literally a tie, then it's a House contingent election, and that House is going to decide it. The House of Representatives will decide it. And the vice president becomes the de facto president until the House contingent election happens. And then the House of Representatives, that's all won by elections too. It'll be the brand new House that votes for it, I think, right? Or would it be the old House that votes for it? I'll have to recheck the Constitution. 306 to 232. So if it was a tie, then the House of Representatives would decide it, and they would choose between the top 3 candidates. Well, who actually got the, third? What if they say nobody got the electoral? You would have to have a couple of faithless defectors that actually voted, and then some state, I want to say Maine, and there's another one where they do proportionality. So the person wins 40%, 60%, so they got 5. One person gets 2 votes, the other one gets 5. That's more fair. Instead of having a winner-take-all, with it being a winner-take-all, the stakes are high. Having a presidential election, the stakes are high, but it's kind of a good thing because once the person wins, then they can govern as they please. But in America, the reason why we haven't had so many problems is because the other person would, there's no contestation. The other person would just concede the election. They would see the numbers. They would see that they lost the popular vote, that they lost the states, they lost the electoral college votes, and then Al Gore would get up there and say, even though I disagree with the Supreme Court's ruling, I respect it, so therefore I quit. And even Nixon had done the same thing when he had lost to JFK. So that's, by saying the other person saying that they quit, there is no contestation. The United States, the experiment, the U.S. experiment, this constitutional Bill of Rights experiment carries on. So that's what you'd like to see. You'd like to see both of the candidates that bubbled up to the top, one of them actually clearly win, and then the other person give a concession speech. Or you don't even have to give a concession speech because that's, humiliating. You could just say, hey, I lost, guys, so thanks anyways. And then just say, adios, amigos, and then put yourself out the pasture and then do whatever, be a private citizen again. Be like Cincinnatus.